What are the top 5 characters I want to see in Star Wars Resistance? That and more in this video, but before we get to that, I want to say I'm Mike and welcome back to Force Within TV, where we're building a Star Wars animation community and we'd love you to join us by subscribing. But back to that question, what are the top 5 characters I want to see in Star Wars Resistance? Not only what the ones I want to see, I've also brought on the channel Chris from the Star Raptor YouTube channel, and he's going to share his top 5 as well. I have some crazy picks in my top 5, and Chris has some incredible ones. He's really knowledgeable. So we're going to get right into it here, Chris. And first up, I went ahead and cheated, and I want Sabine and Ezra to be in Star Wars Resistance. I think Ahsoka's a little too old, but Ezra and Sabine, it's kind of like old Han Solo in The Force Awakens. It would be cool to see them out in wild space, just, getting up to no good and running into, the main character of this series. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because I'm just thinking in my head about Ezra with 30 more years of knowledge with the Force. How is he going to look? Is he going to be kind of like a Luke Skywalker caliber of a Force user? Is he going to be going around in the unknown regions like Luke is, trying to discover more about the Force? Like, what has he been up to?
Yeah, I kind of envision it almost like they're sort of almost like bounty hunters or smugglers. They're just out there. They're doing their thing. They're having fun. As kind of like a retirement thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because you have these characters that we have no idea where they're going to be at right now. So to see that they could be possibly together at the end of Rebels, we know Sabine's going out to look for him. So
yeah, absolutely. And then there's also, I know my buddies Roberto and Dontrell, who often comment on the channel videos. Those guys absolutely are going to want Ezra Bean. They're going to want to see those two in a relationship. Do I think that I think it would be handled very much like Canon and Hera, where it would be hinted at, right? But not actually shown, but it would be really cool to see. Of course, I just had Andy from Star Wars Rebels Transmissions on, and he was talking about how we may actually get a second animation series. It has been hinted at by Bob Iger, and Dave Filoni himself, I believe, hinted at it as well. And just today, I was messaged on Twitter, a quick message about how there's a posting for Lucasfilm, and it mentions that there's going to be multiple animation series that this person, I think it's some sort of accountant, would have to manage.
Yeah, that is interesting. That I actually seen that as well earlier today on Twitter about the new possible Star Wars animation series. It makes me wonder, if that would be on the streaming platform. But yeah, I would definitely think that would be more of the Ezra and the Sabine type of show there with Ahsoka and Thrawn, possibly, because I would think that they would want to, if they were going to announce this Resistance series, they probably would have let us know that some of those characters are going to be returning. But whether or not they might have a cameo at some point in the series, that I could easily see that happening, but I don't think this is going to really focus too much on them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But let's get to your number 5 as we count down. Who would you like to see in Star Wars Resistance? What character?
All right, so I'm going with Brendol Hux. So Brendol Hux is a character that has been featured only in the literature. So we have him appearing in the Aftermath trilogy. I think it was Life Debt as well as Empire's End. He was featured in there. That is the father of General Hux, Armitage Hux. And he also appears in the Phasma novel, which is also about, it's somewhere in between Bloodline and The Force Awakens, somewhere in that 60-year period. We don't know exactly where it is. So we know he's a crucial part of the First Order because he was one of those old Imperial type people that was led in the Shadow Council, which kind of was something that got started after the Empire's collapse. So, he's always mentioned in all these stories. I just want to see this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see him as well. I've read the Aftermath series. And yeah, that council that he's part of, that really forms the beginning of the First Order. That would be cool to see even that council and what happens with them, that some of the decisions they make. And really, Captain Phasma being, we've been told that Star Wars Resistance is going to include Captain Phasma. And I've heard some people speculating that means we're going to get some First Order clips, or we may even follow
a First Order character, it doesn't really make sense that Captain Phasma would be facing down Poe Dameron or in the Resistance at this point in time. At least not to me. I'm sure they could make it work, but it would make more sense that maybe we're going to get to see some of the Resistance in the show.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we're going to do is with the Poe Dameron comics, we have that whole 25 issues so far. It's still going on, but they've caught up to The Force Awakens at this point. So I think we're probably going to see a story told before the events of the Poe Dameron comics. Remember, it's like a 60-year period because Bloodline takes place about 6 years before Force Awakens. And at the end of Bloodline is when Leia forms the Resistance. So I think we're going to see, I would love to see like this show pick up like right where that book leaves off, like right in the birth of the Resistance there.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Awesome. And this is one of the reasons I have you on the channel is you have such an in-depth knowledge. Really loving chatting to you already. But let's move on to my number 2. I have Ello Asty. I think I'm saying that right. And it's a character that was inspired by JJ's love for the Beastie Boys, the Hello Nasty album or CD or whatever you want to call it. I'm showing my age there. And, he just looks cool. He's he bit it in The Force Awakens, right? He ends up dying. So it'd be cool to see him maybe talking some smack or giving our young pilot a few tips and pointers, something like that. He's just a cool character I would like to see, just for one episode.
Yeah, and this is very interesting because his species of alien is called an Abednito, and there are a lot of Abednitos that have been popping up all over Star Wars recently. So we have his character who only shows up in The Force Awakens, but then as I mentioned like a minute ago with the Poe Dameron comics, there is a central character that's also an Abednito, and his name is Adi Mundi. And then we have in The Last Jedi another Abednito. I don't know exactly what his name is. I forget. So I could definitely see Ello Asty appearing in the series because we haven't really seen him anywhere else in the canon so far. So they could definitely fit that in there easily.
Yeah, it would certainly make sense, as well as a lot of the other Resistance pilots. But what is your number 2, Chris?
That is going to be Shriv from the recent released Battlefront 2 game. He's one of those people that was with the Rebellion after the collapse of the Empire. We pick up in the expansion pack. Forget what the heck it's called right now. But anyway, he is actually a member of the Resistance when we go fast forward 30 years into the future. And he's a really awesome character. He's got this great comedic timing. So I think for an animated series, because he's a Duros, so he's going to look awesome, like translated, I think, to like the animation style that they're going for, which is like an anime inspired.
Yeah.
I've already seen him pop up in one of these Star Wars Adventures IDW comics. So he does kind of fit that niche where they've already got him to work as more of a character that's geared for the kids, which we know on Disney XD, this is going to be another kind of kids geared series. So I can't wait to see this guy possibly like adding so much humor, because it seems like if you look at the cast right now, people have said that a lot of these cast members seem like they come from like a comedic type of background. So
yeah, I was just listening to Force Center the other night, and that's what they were saying. I mean, those guys are Joseph Scrimshaw, I know, is a comedian himself, so he's got a beat on that sort of thing. And yeah, that's really cool. I like that idea. I like keeping it light. It definitely is going to as long as it's done well, the humor. I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of the physical humor that they used with Ezra. Seemed like when Chopper and Zeb wasn't around, I wasn't a huge fan of that. But if they're cracking jokes, they're pilots, right? Like that makes sense, and yeah, it could definitely be a lot of fun. But let's move on here to number 3, and I want your input on this because I know you've been reading the Poe Dameron comics, and I'm behind on those. So Lor San Tekka is my number 3, and I just really I have this feeling that we're not going to get much about the Force, and Dave Filoni just knows so much about the Force, and we learned so much about the Force in Star Wars Rebels. I'm a little, I can't even put it into words. I'm not, I want to see something to do with the Force. I really hope the main character maybe grows into it. They figure out they have some sort of Force connection, not a Jedi, but as a pilot, they realize maybe they do have some sort of a connection with the Force, and it'd be so cool to see Lor San Tekka, maybe even our pilot, if like you had speculated earlier, the main character, what is it, Kazuda? I'm still having a hard time.
Kazuda is Ziona, right? Yeah, I think that's the name.
And he comes into contact with Lor San Tekka and then tells Poe about Lor San Tekka and his connection to Luke Skywalker. That would be pretty interesting. But tell me, Chris, you're caught up with the Poe Dameron comics. Has that already sort of played out in the comics?
Yeah, pretty much. So the whole crux of the Poe Dameron series is actually from the very first issue, Leia is sending Poe Dameron on this mission to find Lor San Tekka, and he is pretty much the MacGuffin of the entire series. Now, midway through the series, they kind of get away from trying to track him down, but by the end of the series, the series is still going on, but by the end of the 25 issues, he does catch up to him, but... So, I mean, he could definitely fit in the story because, I mean, obviously Leia knows about Lor San Tekka at this point. So how does she come in contact with him, or the Resistance? How do they know about him? Because before this, we don't know anything about the character. It's not like he showed up in the original trilogy anywhere. So they could maybe possibly set him up, and he does know so much about the Force. So like you said, a show that's not really geared around any certain character that we know that's, Force sensitive, that could be a little window into it, because I do agree with you in the whole Dave Filoni. Every series he has done something with the Force that nobody has expected and has like really expanded on the Star Wars lore. So it would be pretty disappointing not getting that in this series for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to your number 3.
That would be Thane Kyrell. So he is from the young adult novel from Disney Lucasfilm Publishing called Lost Stars, which if you look on anybody's list online, that's usually like the #1 book that people say is the must-read book in all of the Star Wars canon right now. It's a story about this young couple that basically started out in the Empire during obviously the original trilogy, and Thane Kyrell, he actually defects to the rebellion while his significant other, Sienna Rey, stays with the Empire. And this goes all the way through the original trilogy, all the way to the events of the Battle of Jakku, which is about a year after the Battle of Endor. And what basically happens there is Thane is with the New Republic, and I don't really want to spoil too much for what happens with Sienna Rey, but regardless of the fact, Thane could very well fit into the Resistance, because actually in this specific novel, he is one of the fighter pilots that discovers the Resistance base that would later be Dakar. This is way back when in the original trilogy, and he is a renowned fighter pilot. So again, that would be another connection. This series, we know, is going to be heavily influenced by World War II dogfighting and stuff, so it's going to have a lot of that dogfighting in it, and he would be a very experienced pilot, and he would probably show them the base on Dakar, or the planet Dakar, and get them set up on the base. I could see that being like a whole story arc. So I think he would just fit extremely well, and people are dying to see what happens to this character for sure.
Yeah, it would be so cool to see Thane brought to life. And it's so funny because we both play the X-Wing miniatures game.
Yeah.
And Thane Kyrell is one of the named ships that just came out in a new release. And I was like, who is that? And you just jogged my memory. Of course, yes, Lost Stars. I've read the book. Amazing ending. I'm glad you didn't spoil it for anybody. And yeah, just a great book. I think just about anybody would enjoy that book. So yeah, great choice. Absolutely. Really showing just how much you know about the canon. That's definitely why I watch your channel closely, for that knowledge. And moving on here though, for number 4 of mine, we got Force Ghost Yoda, and I know this is maybe a little weird. Let's say the connection, I just really want a connection to the original trilogy here from Star Wars Resistance. I know, yes, there's going to be a lot more connection to the sequel trilogy, but wouldn't it be cool if our characters, maybe the pilots, discover a Jedi temple, they're in the temple, They're trying to, figure out maybe they're trying to figure out how to get in or something like that. And they're visited by Yoda. He gives them some wisdom and, maybe they're able to overcome some sort of challenge. Again, I just really want to get the Jedi into this series. Who doesn't love Force Ghost Yoda? He showed up in The Last Jedi. He's rumored to show up in episode 9. Yeah, what do you think about that one, Chris?
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting choice for sure. It didn't really come up on my radar when I was thinking of these, but that's awesome because again, it's like it's way out there, but it could totally happen. I mean, look at Rebels. I would have never thought that Yoda would show up in that series to this kid Ezra Bridger, and it happens there. So that just goes to show you, like, anything could really happen at this point. So.
All right, you're locked in. Anything could happen. Let's move on to your number 4.
All right, so I'm going to go with Hera Syndulla. I think she would make a great addition to the Resistance. Now, we would have to have a really good explanation of why she wasn't there during The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, but she has met Leia, right? I think she's met Leia in Rebels, has she? Or in some
I don't
other
think
thing.
She met Leia, or Hera and Leia have met. They did meet, though. There was that comic book. What is it? The
Force of Destiny,
yeah,
right?
Forces of Destiny.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
on
about.
Hoth, they met.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, heck, she showed up on Hoth. We never seen her, so they could just shoehorn her into like a background scene and say she was there during The Force Awakens or something.
Yep.
Or she could be getting the allies during The Last Jedi. She could be out in the Outer Rim. But anyway, so with the Resistance, she seems like Hera would be one of those people that would, know what's going on with the New Republic and know what's going on with the First Order, and probably would be one of the first people to sign up with Leia and the Resistance, because she is one of those maverick type characters that is always out there. And it's just kind of this character, she kind of goes into one of your future choices that you have on your list, which I've already seen. So we can kind of hint at that one as well as a package deal. If she shows up, that person will show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, we might as well just move on here to Jason Syndulla. Nice segue there, Chris. And Jason Syndulla, I thought it would be really cool if the two of them were working together as flight instructors. We know from what we know from the Star Wars comic book, and I believe it's Dr. Aphra, it looks like that was Hera's role, right? Which makes sense. She's pregnant. She has a young child. She was a general, but they're probably looking to put her into a less stressful situation. So as a young mother, so a flight instructor really works for her. And what if Jason and her are both flight instructors with the Resistance? We get to see them early on and, training various pilots. I thought that would be really cool. It could just be a cameo in the background, or they can actually have some dialogue. Either would work for me. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, definitely. Then Hera Syndulla, this could be the link we need to Ben Solo and Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy. Now, everybody wants this to happen. They all want us to somehow get linked to that whole storyline because he's got to be Force sensitive. I mean, he was born from Canon Jarrus, right? I don't think there's ever been a person that's been born from a Jedi that hasn't been Force sensitive to my knowledge. Or at least there's a really good chance you could be a Jedi after being born from one. But
I just published a video today about Jason and whether or not he's Force sensitive and could he fall to the dark side. And one of the things that came to me as I was trying to write that up was that if you look at Jason, he looks much more like Kanan than Hera. Like he doesn't look like a Twi'lek much at all.
Nope.
So that really it makes me think he must be Force sensitive because he definitely has much more of a makeup, much more of an influence from Kanan, and Kanan's Force sensitive. So
yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing again. I mean, it would be fast forward, so he would be at least 25, going on 30 years old. I'm not sure when he's
mid 20s, 30 years old. That's what I can. Again, we're not sure exactly when this show is set either. So somewhere in a 5 to 6 year window. So yeah, somewhere in there though. Yeah. So what about your Jason Syndulla was my number 1 pick. What about you?
I have the Grand Admiral herself, Rey Sloane. Now, this character has been one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars canon for the last however long that's been, since 2000, 2004 years now. It's basically A New Dawn came out in 2014, I believe. First book out in canon, and that was one of the villains to Hera and Kanan. So it would be awesome to kind of come around full circle and have her as one of the overarching villains of the entire series, because we're pretty sure that she survives and gets at least to the First Order, because they do make reference to her in the Phasma novel, which, a lot of it is from, closer to The Force Awakens. So they didn't say she was alive. They just kind of mentioned her name. So it's very murky right now, but I kind of don't see any reason why she would be dead at this point, because she would be, I think, like in her 60s probably. So I mean, this is a character, like, I'm going to just run through the list. So chronologically, she's actually appeared in the Canon comic. I think it was like one of the last issues that came out. She runs into Kanan. So then they also meet in A New Dawn, and then they meet in, she's a big part of the whole Aftermath trilogy. So that's what happens with her. She's tied into trying to bring up the Empire at its end. And literally, she's one of the last surviving members of the Empire as they go to hyperspace into the unknown regions. And that's the last time we ever see her. So she pretty much name drops the First Order in like the last sentence of the novel, I'm pretty sure. She's like, this is our First Order, or something like that. So, I mean, up until Snoke comes along, which is a whole nother discussion, she could theoretically be the leader of the First Order, because we know that Snoke comes into play a little bit after he sees the First Order struggling with this unknown force that we don't know about yet, which, that's a lot of information right there to just speculate on itself. But yeah, she's been near and dear to my heart, because she's one of the first characters I've really got attached to in this whole new world of the Star Wars canon. So
yeah, that's a great choice. And I mean, I'd really like to see her brought to life too. And I think there's a really good chance, especially if we do see, Phasma and the First Order side of things, that she could show up. She's obviously someone that the Lucasfilm story group really loves. And we know Dave Filoni is part of that group. And we know that story group, I think, has a lot more say when it comes to the animation world.
Oh, yeah.
So if there is any way they can get Rey Sloane into this, I guarantee you they will. It's just a matter of the timeline matches up. They may shy away from it now that I'm thinking about it, just because of it's not really defined when Snoke shows up yet. So that they might want to leave that open for whoever tackles that book on Snoke, which hopefully we will get at some point. I think Lucasfilm is crazy for not making that a movie. If you look at how popular Snoke theories were on YouTube, it really that was most channels, most popular videos between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi had some sort of relation to Snoke. And so obviously people are really interested about this character, and it might go, we at least need a book, but it would be really cool if it was a movie too, for sure.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of hype around that character, and there's still so much to figure out about his past. So
yeah, exactly. Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. Obviously, guys, if you've listened this far, you understand that Chris really knows his stuff. Chris, tell the people, what can they expect if they head on over to your channel, Star Raptor?
All right, so on my YouTube channel, I do have a large emphasis on Star Wars. So every week I do a show called This Week in Star Wars Canon. So I basically just round up all the new comics. If there's any updates in any video games, any novels, I do talk about the animated series whenever they are on there. I do reviews for that. So you can kind of look forward to all that kind of thing. I do also talk about some miniature Star Wars games like Star Wars Legion and occasionally the X-Wing game from Fantasy Flight Games. I also do Let's Plays, so sometimes I'll do like Battlefront 2 videos, and I'll talk about stuff that isn't Star Wars. So I'll do movie reviews, like I've just reviewed Avengers Infinity War, and I'll see all the major action movies and whatnot. So yeah, just a little bit of a mixture of everything. I go to some live events, like I actually had an interview recently with the person that actually plays Ezra Bridger. So yes, definitely check that. Taylor Gray. Definitely check that out.
Excellent.
I was at the Great Philadelphia Con over this past weekend. So yeah, I have a fun time doing it. You can also find me on my Twitter at Star Raptor, and I have the Facebook page Star Raptor as well. So
awesome. So everybody, please check out the Facebook and Twitter feeds, pages, feeds, whatever you want to call them, and head on over. In fact, I will have linked down in the comments below to some of your This Week in Star Wars canon type videos. So definitely check that out, guys. Chris really knows his stuff. He reads all the novels, all the comics, as far as I know. And, and he really, like I said, he really knows his stuff. So check that out. Thanks so much for coming on, Chris.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Just one more time, guys, I want to say a big thank you to Chris. Make sure you check out his channel, Star Raptor. I'll have a link down below in the comments. And if you made it this far, the question of the day is, of course, what are your top 5 characters you want to see in Star Wars Resistance? I'll be doing a community video on this next week. Let me know in the comments below. Love chatting Star Wars with you guys, and may the Force be with you.